So we're learning more about the discovery of 5 additional pages marked classified at President Biden's home in Delaware. The White House says that they were discovered Thursday. The president did not address the situation yesterday during a visit to the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Adriana Diaz is in Washington with more on this. Adriana, good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. President Biden is facing a growing storm of criticism for his handling of classified materials. And Republican lawmakers are ramping up for investigations. And one Democratic senator is even calling the situation embarrassing.
Amid growing calls for transparency, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, which is investigating the documents matter, sent this letter to the White House Sunday, requesting the visitor log of President Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home from his first day as president to now.
The administration hasn't been transparent about what's going on with President Biden's possession of classified documents.
Classified documents from Mr. Biden's time as vice president ended up at his Wilmington home and former private office. The original discovery made in November was not disclosed to the public until CBS News asked the White House about it 1 week ago. And a new revelation came Saturday when White House lawyer Richard Sauber said when he went to the president's Delaware home to turn over a single page marked classified to the Justice Department, 5 additional pages with classification markings were discovered among the material.
Well, it's certainly embarrassing, right? I mean, it's embarrassing that you would find a small number of documents, certainly not on purpose.
Democrats say there are key differences between President Biden's situation and the hundreds of classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago, which former President Trump resisted turning over for more than a year.
The moment they found out about the documents that day, turned them over. That is a very different posture than what we saw with Donald Trump.
But while some Republicans allege a double standard,
what's real concerning to me is how justice is applied, and is it applied equally?
Others say this presents problems for both parties.
So I think there's blame to go around on both sides of this. And I think if you're an honest statesman, you just can't point the fingers to the other guy and deny that there was problems on our side as well.
The special counsel appointed by the Attorney General to investigate will soon get to work compiling his team and digging deeper to determine the key question, Anne-Marie. Was this carelessness or was this intentional? Legal experts tell us that only if this was intentional could potential charges be warranted.
Interesting. And it certainly makes me wonder just how many other documents are there out there connected to all manner of people. It certainly seems like the classified document system needs a bit of an overhaul. That being said, what do Republicans want with the list of visitors from Biden's home? What are they hoping to find?
They want to see who conceivably could have laid eyes on these documents, who was in the House throughout the past year. But note, they only asked for the log starting when President Biden took office as president until today. So there's also years before then when potentially these documents could have been at the House. President Biden has said repeatedly that he was surprised to learn that these documents were even there. So it is possible that they could have just been left in these boxes without anyone seeing them. But that is what has to be determined. Did anyone lay eyes on these documents? Because these documents, of course, contain very risky information.
New York Democrat Congressman Daniel Goldman was on Face the Nation this Sunday. Certainly was asked about this. I want to play a little of that conversation.
But I do think it goes to a really important fact that is being missed here, which is that this administration is doing things by the book. There is a divide and a separation between the Department of Justice and the White House that certainly did not exist in the last administration. And President Biden and his team have reached out to the archives. They've reached out to the Department of Justice. They have done everything they can to cooperate. Yeah. And that's in direct contrast to what former President Trump has done, where he has obstructed justice at every turn.
So, you know, we heard from Republican Congressman Bacon in your piece saying that there are problems on both sides. I think that the problems, one of the common problems is how these classified documents are kept track of. But there are some key differences between the way President Biden has handled the situation and former President Trump.
Anne Marie, you bring up a really important point. Just to start with the similarities, we spoke to Michael Morell, who was the acting director of the CIA, and he said that there's a big problem in terms of how these top officials handle these documents. He said they're given a lot of leeway because of who they are, and there is no oversight, no accountability to know what documents they take home, which they can do, and what documents come back. So that is an important issue that connects these two cases. There are a lot of key differences distinguishing these two cases. First and foremost, the amount of documents that we know of, more than 300 recovered from Mar-a-Lago from President Trump. So far, we know of roughly 20 classified documents recovered from President Biden. And then when you think about how these documents were recovered, in the case of President Biden, as you just heard Congressman Goldman say, President Biden's team turned over the documents as soon as they found them, they tell us. In the case of President Trump, he resisted requests from the National Archives, from the Department of Justice for months for these documents until finally the FBI had to execute a search warrant where they found more than 100 at Mar-a-Lago. And so when you look at the number, how they were retrieved, and the level of cooperation, President Biden so far has been cooperating. That's what the White House says. That's what he has said. But when you look at President Trump, one of the charges that's on the table is obstruction because of that lack of cooperation.
Adriana Diaz, thank you very much.